What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it looks like this week is going to be pretty busy for gaming, with events being announced all around seemingly March 9th from studios like Capcom and Level 5. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a pretty big update for Nintendo Switch Online, bringing a game that many people have been requesting for years now. And we'll also be discussing a massive announcement from Bandai Namco that I am sure most Dragon Ball fans did not see coming. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Counter-Strike 2. We, of course, have Counter-Strike Go on Steam right now, and it's like the most popular game, that in Dota 2 from Valve. But there have been talks around the idea of a sequel even, which was brought up in that NVIDIA leak list that got out there, and that's been like 100% since then. But it appears some things are starting to move in the background. For example, we can see this over on Dexerto. Says, following years of leaks and rumors about a version of CSGO on Source Engine, files from an NVIDIA driver update at the end of February showed a CSGO S2 executable. And from there, we have anonymous sources with knowledge of the game's development told Richard Lewis that the Source 2 version of Counter-Strike had been a priority at Valve, with one quoted as saying, "The big priority is getting this out and then polishing it, fixing any bugs, and bringing it up to level people expect from CS or Counter-Strike." Of course, there were some concerns as to what exactly this is. Gabe Follower 2 clarified a bit, saying it won't be a new game, it won't be Counter-Strike 2, it won't even be a rebrand. Just CSGO Source 2, and your skins are fine. They will be available in the new version. So it most likely sounds like Valve is just updating and moving CSGO up to Source 2, their newer engine, which makes sense considering CSGO is what, on the Source engine that was from 2004, 2005. Yeah, I'm sure they want to make sure as many of their games as possible are moved up to their newer engine, and most likely it'll be, I expect, a smooth transition, but it sounds like we'll find out in the coming month or two. Also, while Wolong Fallen Dynasty did release on Friday, and people have checked it out through Game Pass and all of this, there was one sector that didn't exactly get the best version, and they're now showing that with their response on places like Steam reviews, which you can see right now is sitting at mostly negative. And a lot of this has to do with just the port not being very good. From what many people are gathering here, this feels like they took the PS5 version of the game and just did a very light port and patchwork to get it onto the system or on PC, just to get it up and running and then submit it to Steam. Unfortunately, it has issues when it comes to stuttering, and I'll tell you now, in a game like Wolong Fallen Dynasty, where your reaction time to be able to deflect and block and dodge, very important, and having something where all of a sudden you have this really strange pause or stutter while you're trying to fight off some of these enemies, yeah, not a great time with that one. Unfortunately, that's kind of where we are now. Everyone's sort of hoping that they can fix this up, but it just does not seem to be a version that's recommended at this time. If you want to check out Wolong, I would honestly point towards the Xbox version through Game Pass, or pick it up on the PlayStation 5. Oh, and we had a bit of a random announcement. If you were someone who was curious about Mario Rabbids Sparks of Hope, but didn't necessarily want to buy in and just hope you ended up liking it, there is a demo that is now available. In fact, there was an entire trailer that dropped for the demo, which you can see some of this here, and it's available now. And from what they described in the trailer, it's the beginning of the game. I'm not sure how much of the beginning you get to play here, if your save data transfers over. I would assume it would if they're just starting you from like legit beginning of this title. But I did like Sparks of Hope. I think it's going to come down to the battle system and if people really enjoy that or not, that being kind of more that strategy RPG setup, but I think they had some pretty good refinements here over the first one, and it's definitely an interesting game to play through. So at the very least, if you're curious, check out the demo and see what you think. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with a big update for Nintendo Switch Online. This was announced at the end of last week, heading into the weekend, and that's that Metroid Fusion will be heading to the Game Boy Advanced NSO this week. We can see this posted over on Twitter from Nintendo of America, saying, "Adventure to planet SR-388 as interstellar bounty hunter Samus Aran in the Metroid Fusion, coming to Nintendo Switch for NSO plus expansion pack members on March 9th. It was really fun as they do have a trailer they had to cut together and put out there, and it's always fun to see them kind of have more of a modern take on putting these trailers together for these retro games. But yes, coming March 9th, that actually places it exactly a month after they initially revealed the entire Game Boy Advance, Game Boy line for NSO and dropped it during that Nintendo Direct. I know Nintendo said that they're not following any like set rhythm or release schedule for any of this, but it does technically line up with the month releases. Now, they obviously have other systems they have to account for with the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, N64, and regular Game Boy, but maybe they'll just kind of mix things up as they go along, and they even do like 2 releases at times in a month if they have to go to Nintendo or Super Nintendo and accommodate that, or maybe they legitimately bounce between Game Boy and Game Boy Advance for a good portion of the year and then throw that N64 game out there every now and then. In fact, if you look at the upcoming games for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance with Metroid Fusion now out, we have Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, Fire Emblem, F-Zero, Golden Sun. On the Game Boy, we have Legend of Zelda, Oracle Seasons, and Ages, Pokemon Trading Card Game, which is still the one I'm pretty excited to see that get added, and then Kirby Tilt and Tumble. So they still have a couple they can pull from here, but this is also a list they could end up going through pretty quickly, even getting it all done potentially this year. Now, the nice thing again about Fusion 1, it's a very good 2D Metroid game. If you've never played it on the Game Boy Advance, which we're going to find out more about that one, because that was a poll question I had to kind of see where the audience was sitting with this, it's a really good title to play through. Maybe Metroid Dread was even your first 2D Metroid game, and if that's the case, you gotta go play Super Metroid, like, now. But then, hey, Metroid Fusion getting added in, and all the rumors and talks around Metroid Prime 2 and 3 potentially seeing, more basic remasters, but kind of being moved to HD, maybe play around with some of the controls, but being added in, means that the Switch is like the Metroid machine, and they can cap it all off with Metroid Prime 4, maybe at the end of this year or early 2024. I guess they still need like Metroid Zero Mission. Why not add that in too? Just have the entire library, and I think we can leave Federation Force where it is. But I will admit, it's been a bit more exciting now to think that these Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games could get announced at any time throughout the rest of this year, so it is making me pay a bit more attention to some of these Nintendo Switch Online updates, certainly more so than when we were seeing some bottom-of-the-barrel stuff get added on the Nintendo and Super Nintendo. Next up, let's continue on with March 9th, because while we have Metroid Fusion and the Mario Kart Wave 4 DLC being added, there's also several gaming events taking place from different studios. For example, we can see this over on Game Pressure. They did a very good job kind of listing out each event to keep this all organized. We have Level 5, so this is the first one up here. That's noon Central Time. And they're expected to show off a couple of titles, Fantasy Life and The Girl Who Steals Time, Inazuma 11, Deca Police, which Deca Police I kind of think could be that sleeper hit, and for a new IP, I think they have something very creative and interesting here. And then obviously Professor Layton and the New World of Steam, which for that title, we only saw sort of a very quick teaser cinematic, so maybe they'll show off in-game aspects of it, or who knows, maybe they'll just kind of hang out with the developers at a table and just sort of talk about their thoughts around development and what their plans and strategies were here. Moving up, though, we then have Nakon. That's happening a few hours later, and while we do have several titles they're going to show here, like the Lord of the Rings Gollum, Ad Infinitum, Raven's Watch, Gangs of Sherwood, TT Isle of Man, the one I want to see, like, have more time with and full gameplay is RoboCop Rogue City. I think that game is coming out this year, so while they had a very brief glimpse of it in the initial reveal, I would love to see a solid 10 to 15 minute gameplay trailer for that drop and even them kind of discuss it a bit more. But then we have the big event that I think a lot of people are looking towards for March 9th, and that's from Capcom. They say tune into the Capcom Spotlight on March 9th for news on Resident Evil 4, Exoprimal, Monster Hunter Rise, Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, and Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. So I'm not really sure what they need to tell us about for Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. Oh, who knows? The last time they wanted to share more information, they talked about playing it online and having like a Mega Man avatar or whatever to show you around the menu. So they could have some more tricks up their sleeve, I guess, for that collection. Resident Evil 4, I assume, I mean, this has to be where the demo is dated or dropped just completely. And that'd be great if on the 9th, we have the entire weekend to try to play through a demo that they dropped for Resident Evil 4. Exo Primal, maybe they'll have I guess a date or beta period or something to show off there. Monster Hunter Rise, always a chance for more downloadable content. And then Ghost Trick them, probably just explaining what that is to the vast majority of people. But either way, certainly a jam-packed day there, and Capcom will be taking place 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be checking that out, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it a bit over the weekend as well as Monday's Newswave. Next up, let's talk about a massive announcement that no Dragon Ball fans saw coming. Now, they had like their esports tournament, Dragon Ball Fighters, and all these different things happening over the weekend, and they capped it off with the Dragon Ball Battle Hour, where they'll do different announcements and talks about different things in the world of Dragon Ball. But they did have a reveal that got everyone online hyped, myself included. It was exciting stuff to see this reveal because it was a genuine surprise to basically all of us for a series that we thought was basically in the past. And that's Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi. This is a series that basically ran parallel. They didn't want it to be considered a run with the Dragon Ball Z Budokai series, even though Budokai Tenkaichi kind of lined that up, but different developers and definitely a different play style. Well, take a look at the trailer that was shown by Bandai, and it does the thing where it goes back to maybe an older PS2 version or even on the Wii that you were playing, showing those old school visuals, and then it slowly shifts into, I would say, a very high quality, high production value cutscene, cinematic, in-game visuals. I mean, this caught, I think, a lot of people off guard when they did this shift because, oh, maybe they're going to do a remaster. Maybe they'll do a collection. That'd be fun. Oh, no, wait. Here's a brand new Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, and I assume they'll just number it 4. I feel like the shot that is probably the most reflective of what the game will actually look like is at the end after Goku is done powering up and turning into Super Saiyan Blue, zooms out and you see some of the environment there looking somewhat realistic with obviously a much more cel-shaded Goku standing there. I'm kind of thinking that's what it will look like with these shots at times being zoomed into the characters and kind of having that Dragon Ball Fighters-esque look to it. So Tenkaichi, or a Budokai Tenkaichi series, is a fan favorite, I would say, especially back on the PS2 and the Wii, 1 through 3, with 3 especially. Very impressive stuff for the number of characters that they got into those titles, but I will say, while you look at the list, it's like 180 some odd characters. They counted every form as a character, so while in Budokai you would transform many times as Goku or something there, each one of those was counted separately for Tenkaichi. But nonetheless, it was a really fun breakaway from Budokai. It felt like you had a lot more freedom, and some of the special moves and stuff were genuinely impressive on that hardware. So I see a ton of potential for this game, and it's also nice that even after all the Xenoverse DLC we've been getting, there is something really exciting to look forward to here with Tenkaichi 4. I am curious, though, about one thing, and that's the developer behind this. They didn't necessarily share any information at the time of this recording around that, but we're still very limited on just information in general. As they said, it's in development. Will they have Spike Chunsoft work on this? Because Spike was the original developer basically across the board for all of the Tenkaichi and then the subsequent games kind of in that series that went into the Xbox 360, PS3 era and all this. And I think their last game they made was Dragon Ball Z Connect. So maybe a redemption arc here for them. But now that they've merged them with Chunsoft, hard to say if they would now be involved with this project or if Bandai Namco is looking elsewhere. But either way, I'm really excited for this. This is awesome to have this announcement for a new Budokai Tenkaichi game. I don't know when it's coming out. Seems like it's very early on. It could be a couple of years. But either way, really, really exciting stuff to cap off the weekend with. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Square Enix with a shakeup now hitting at the top of the company. We can see this posted over on Twitter from RPG site saying, pending approval at the next annual shareholders meeting, Yosuke Matsuda will no longer be president of Square Enix. his role will be succeeded by Takashi Kiryu. And so we're looking through this now. They still have to prove it. Most likely they will. Usually you make these kind of announcements after you've sort of looked around and scoped out the environment, make sure that it most likely will be a thing. So yes, it does look like Yosuke Matsuda, after it's been, I guess, 10 years, right? 2013 is when he took over as president. Be 10 years, and then he's kind of on his way out at that point. He might stay on as like an advisory role or something for the transition of the president position there. But having Takashi Kiryu come in does have some people a bit concerned for a few reasons. One, he's only been with Square Enix since I think 2020, so he's relatively new to the company. And the other thing that I saw brought up a lot is that his previous company that he worked at was really buddy-buddy with NFT companies. However, I will point out his previous company was like an advertising and PR firm, basically, where, hey, how do we get this information and news and message out to the general public? And they would figure all of that out, how to present it, which at the time, NFTs were this massive run-up and rise. So they're throwing around a lot of money looking for big agencies that would represent them. And I'm sure the one he was working with there was doing that. Doesn't necessarily mean he's really into NFTs or going to be pushing it heavily, although I don't think it really matters one way or the other, because Square has really been on this NFT train and blockchain as it is, and that's even with Matsuda there. Now, if you look back on 2013 to now, hasn't been the best run for Square. They built their Luminous engine and then seemingly have now folded it, and it does kind of seem like maybe they were tying up some loose ends with their Western division, moving those off to Embracer, as Matsuda now setting up to basically move on from that president position. But I am curious what this will do for Square, say, over the next 10 years. But the one nice thing, the one silver lining is having this new president come in. They're set up right from the start with Final Fantasy 16, because that is building up to be, I think, a colossal release for the company. I really am looking more and more at Final Fantasy 16 as being a massive seller that could potentially reach 15 million units sold. Could it do something like 20 and really set them up for success? Yeah, it's possible, but it also depends on how the PlayStation 5 continues to do, since it's technically locked into that one platform. But there we have it. Starting in May, it looks like Matsuda will be moving on as president from Square Enix. And before we go to the comments of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, have you played Metroid Fusion before? 27% say yes, I played it first on the Game Boy Advance. Okay, 17% say yes, I played it first on the Virtual Console or through just emulation. 56%. No, I haven't played it before. That is incredible stuff. And I know you can just emulate Game Boy Advance on almost anything at this point, but the convenience factor, I think, does play into it. Oh, it's right there on my Switch. I'll go ahead and fire it up. And I do think there are a lot of people now who are just being introduced to these games for the first time, and I think really has a chance to revitalize any of these series. I know Metroid has already kind of gone through that, but think of titles like Golden Sun. What if Golden Sun got added to that NSO library like it's going to, but gets a lot of traction, a lot of interest. People are playing it, and Nintendo might even notice some of the engagement there. Could lead to them maybe taking a bit more time and thinking about greenlighting the next one in the series. So, hey, if you see someone who's like, oh, it'd be really fun to play this for the first time, I would encourage them, because if you're a Golden Sun fan, for example, you want as many people talking about the series as possible. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Clive saying, when the original Octopath Traveler released in 2018, the number of RPGs and games in general on the Switch was still pretty low, so I'm not surprised to see these launch numbers for Octopath Traveler 2. Also, I have way more games than I can play right now, and I'm trying to finish a few Switch and PS5 games so I can focus on Tears of the Kingdom. So I've thought more and more around the Octopath 2 situation, as sales have come in for a lot of people below expectations and seemingly below the first one. Really, the first thing I can think of is Octopath Traveler, the original, when that was shown, that was also kind of the introduction of HD2D, and we're like, whoa, this looks really cool. Now we've gotten, I would say, very much used to HD2D. It's been used many times, and the other thing I think of is, as you mentioned, kind of the crowded nature of just titles in general right now, especially even on the Switch. But I think it's possible some people played Octopath Traveler, that first one, and it wasn't necessarily what they were expecting with the stories, and And maybe that put them off, and they're like, well, I just didn't like the first one that much. I'm not going to play the second one. I think it's also possible, though, going forward, that Octopath Traveler 2 just kind of continues to sell, maybe at a slower pace, and it eventually climbs past that original game. I mean, it's also on more platforms now, so you would hope, but I guess we'll see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's all these events coming up this Friday? Are you expecting that RE4 demo to drop? Are you looking forward to seeing Professor Layton potentially for the first time? And then also, what about Metroid Fusion dropping in NSO? And were you as excited as me, and I'm sure basically all of the internet was, to see Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4 get announced? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.